Welcome. So far in Unit 2, we have observed what we can do to deal with open, close exercises. So, when dealing with open-close exercises, we have to focus on grammar words as we have studied, and these grammar words that we have to pay a lot of attention to are prepositions. Clearly we have already focused on this, and pronouns. This is the reason we're getting together right now. Pronouns, all types of pronouns, but the ones we're going to observe now are relative pronouns. And when talking about relative pronouns, who, that, which, where, when, whose, and a few others, we have to study relative clauses. But what are clauses? Okay, so have a look at the picture. Try and remember that a phrase is made of nouns and adjectives. Now, when dealing with clauses, we have to observe the verbs. So in the clause, the example given, when he comes to our home, we get gifts. Think about it, how many verbs have we got there? 2 verbs. That's okay, that's right. This means that there are 2 clauses in the example given. We get gifts is the main clause, and when he comes to our home is the dependent clause. In other words, a dependent clause or a relative clause is the one that depends on another idea for the whole sentence to make sense. Now, what are relative clauses? The first idea we have to try and understand is if this dependent clause, remember that part of the sentence with one verb plays the role of the subject in the sentence or the role of the object. So let's get started with subject clauses. Clearly, if the relative pronoun substitutes for the subject, then we're going to have a subject clause. Observe the example. Glaciers are rivers of ice. They form in cold climates on the mountains. You see, they substitute for glaciers. So, we've got a subject clause in which form in cold climates on the mountains. Glaciers are rivers of ice which form in cold climates on the mountains. In that case, which are the relative pronouns we can use? We use who, which, that, and whose. Observe, Charles Dickens was a novelist. Charles Dickens wrote A Christmas Carol. Charles Dickens was the novelist who wrote A Christmas Carol. We use who when describing people. The man is this, his car was stolen. This is the man whose car was stolen. Whose indicates possession. Now, as for the object clauses, the relative pronoun works as the object of the sentence. Observe the example. Glaciers contain what? fresh water. The fresh water is greater than all the other lakes and rivers. The fresh water that glaciers and rivers is greater. I'm sorry. The fresh water that glaciers contain is greater than all the other lakes and rivers. Forgive me there, please. It's the first time I'm doing this, so I know you understand. I'll get better as time goes by. Let's move on. Well, if you're dealing with object clauses, this means that you can omit the relative pronoun. Observe the example. They use the photos on the website. The photos are fascinating. The photos used on the website are fascinating. If you're dealing with object clauses, then the relative pronouns you use will be who or whom, which, and that. Observe the example. He is a scientist. I admire him most. He is one of the scientists whom, who or that, I admire most. And you can omit any of these pronouns. So, what is the difference? Why should you use whom instead? What's the difference that whom makes? It just makes the sentence more formal. In this case, all right, it makes the sentence more formal. We'll get very soon. We'll be observing the only case in which you're obliged to use whom. Keep this under your hat. We'll get back to this a little later. Let's move on. This is all old news for you. Okay, we can draw a conclusion now. Defining relative clauses are those that give essential information about the subject or the object of the main clause. Observe the example. Friction is the force that resists the movement of one object against another. Friction is the force that. So, remember, essential information. Friction is the force that. The sentence is not separated by commas. Now there are non-defining relative clauses. Clearly, it's when they give extra information about the subject or the object of the main clause. You understand the sentence if you leave out the relative clause. You understand the information that was conveyed. So observe the example. Wrapping an object in aluminum foil, which reduces energy loss, keeps food hot. In other words, extra information and commas are always used. This is old news for you. Now, let me try and problematize a little. You see? You can use that when you're dealing with defining relative clauses, and you cannot use that when dealing with non-relative clauses. So I've already told you this, but the thing is, the rule of thumb is, in case you're in doubt, try and choose which and who, because then you are unlikely to make mistakes. Alright? I'll keep on problematizing your lives, I'm afraid. What is new for you is the use of relative clauses combined with prepositions. And this is the case of whom. What do I mean to say here? You are obliged to use the form whom instead of who after a preposition. Observe the example. The prepositions, the first alternative makes sentences more formal, and the second alternative makes sentences more informal. It's all a matter of register. Enter the address of the person to whom you want to forward the message. Observe the position of the preposition, always followed by the form whom if you're referring to people, obviously. Now, compare with the informal way. Enter the address of the person who you want to forward the message to. So yes, the preposition goes to the end of the sentence. So position here, the word order, and in this specific case, the position of the preposition is paramount. So, prepositions can be used with which and whose. This is the spacecraft in which the astronauts visited the moon. This is the spacecraft the astronauts visited the moon in. So remember that you can leave out, in the informal way, you can leave out the relative pronoun which, because this is an object clause. Okay? Don't forget this. And focus on the position of the preposition. More examples for you. The instruments with which we measure air pressure is called a barometer. So see, in this case we use with, because with is a dependent preposition that goes with the verb measure. You measure something with a tool, an object, okay? In the informal style, the instrument we measure air pressure with is called a barometer. So as you can see, the position of the preposition here is a focus. It's got to be in focus, and you have to pay attention to, because this can be the answer to an open-close type of exercise. Okay? Let's move on. More examples for you. Dr. Gibson, the scientist on whose research the article is based, agreed. Remember, based on dependent preposition. The informal way, Dr. Gibson, the scientist whose research the article is based on, agreed. Yeah, food for thought, guys. Food for thought. Okay. Now, there are other types of relative pronouns, and in my opinion, as they're pretty similar to Portuguese, I don't think you have any difficulty dealing with them, and we're talking about these other relative pronouns. Why? Expressing reason. I've just passed my driving test, and that is the reason, optional, why I'm so happy. Then time, we use when. See, 1969 was the year when the first man went to the moon. But you can also say in which instead of when. So this may make all the difference when doing open-close exercises. You see, guys, 1969 was the year in which the first man went to the moon. There is also place, we use where. A habitat is the place where an animal or plant species lives, and the same thing is valid here. In which substitutes where. A habitat is the place in which an animal or plant species lives. Yes, something that is really important, because it's got to do with Portuguese interference, is, what is not a relative pronoun, okay? Instead we use which. Have a look at the example. Tina got very good marks in the exam, which pleased all her teachers. This which refers to the whole idea is stated in the main clause, which refers to the fact that she's got very good marks. And see, in Portuguese, there is Portuguese interference here. Beware, beware, we do not use what, okay? A few final tips now. What, whatever, whoever, and whichever. These three forms are more emphatic. So, what? What is not a relative pronoun to be used in the previous case, as we have already pointed out, when we refer to the previous idea stated in the main clause. But yes, let's compare. What can be used as a relative pronoun, meaning the thing or the things which, observe the example, I don't know what to do, I don't know the things which I have to do. So attention to this, okay? Observe the use of what as a subject for emphasis. What I really want is a new bike. So then you can use what, okay? You cannot use which I really want is a new bike. You see, attention to this, the use of what is tricky. Yeah, we also study relative clauses because we have to improve on our writing. Relative clauses have to do with cohesion, guys. Please don't forget this. Whenever writing a paragraph, a composition, I'll be picking on you to observe all this. Okay, let's move on. Whatever and whoever, they mean anything, anyone at all, can be used in the same way for emphasis. Whatever you do, do it now. So if you want to make it more emphatic, try and use the dependent clause at the beginning of the sentence, but you can also keep it after the main clause, such as in, you can bring whoever you like to the party. Now, whichever can be used instead of whatever when there are more than two items to choose from. Have a look at the example. There are 3 rooms. You can sleep in whichever you prefer. This means you have a choice. There are 3. You have to choose one out of 3. Okay? So, last but definitely not least, some more options. All of, most of, some of, none of, combined with relative pronouns. He owns 3 cars, one of which is over 50 years old. So guys, you always have to be very careful whenever choosing a relative pronoun. Either when you're dealing with open-close exercises, or when you're dealing with, literally with your writing. And there are a number of other applications of this piece of grammar that, you know, this is no news here, but it's a piece of grammar you should always worry about. Okay? So, thanks for watching, and I hope this will have made a difference in our next class. Okay? See you. Thank you. Bye-bye.